Good evening. This State of the District address is happening under very different circumstances, you can see, and all of you listening at home. And typically we would talk about our accomplishments for the past year and what we hope to accomplish the next year. But I'd like to take a broader perspective to really think about what's happened in San Diego Unified through the years. Our school district is 166 years old. It was founded in 1854. That was before the Emancipation Proclamation. We've been through the Civil War. We've been through World War I, the Spanish flu pandemic, the Great Depression. Many of our graduates fought and died in World War II. We had the post-war prosperity, which propelled California to the top in terms of educational funding and outcomes. We had the integration of our schools in the 1970s, 9/11, the Great Recession of 2008, and now the Great Pandemic of 2020, as well as the Black Lives Matter social justice movement. So when I first came on the board in 2008, Richard Barrera and I were first elected to the board. The day after I was elected, a reporter came to my house and said, "What are you going to do about the fact that the governor is cutting millions of dollars from your budget in the middle of the school year?" And those cuts kept coming and coming as we were trying to improve our schools at the same time. And as a result, we became stronger and more resilient and continued to improve our district. Another problem was the revolving door of superintendents. A new superintendent would come in with great new ideas. They'd throw out the old, including the old ideas that were actually working, and create this turmoil. And then after a couple of years, move on to another district and leave us holding the bag. And so what we decided was we wanted more stability in our superintendent leadership. And to do that, we needed to first have a plan for what we wanted in our schools, which we called Vision 2020. We had the staff and the board and the community all meet together over a period of a few years to come up with our ideas of what makes good schools in San Diego. And as we did this, we said, then we can hire a superintendent to implement it, which we did in 2013 when we hired Superintendent Cindy Martin. Now, we chose her because she was a principal in inner city school, a high poverty school, many English language learners, many challenges, but she had a stable staff and was able to achieve success in that school. So we wanted to take it to scale across the district so that we could have successful schools throughout San Diego. So just to talk for a minute about some of the elements of Vision 2020. First of all, we wanted a broad and challenging curriculum. Yes, we wanted the basics, but we also wanted music and the arts and science and technology. And our investment in technology really paid off as we came up on this pandemic during this past year. But we also wanted our classes to be very challenging. So we added more advanced placement courses and thousands of students taking college courses while they're still in high school. We also had our students learn another language. And if they wanted to become fluent in the language, they could attend one of our immersion schools. We also wanted to change the way that we measure success, not to just be limited to a couple of standardized test scores, but much broader measures. So we'd really see how our students are succeeding. And to do this, when we did this, a lot of people in the state and across the nation came to San Diego to see how we were achieving the results we were achieving, because in many cases, our students, based on their demographics, were beating the odds. We also wanted to increase our graduation rate, of course, but we wanted to make graduation more meaningful. And so in 2011, we began talking about a requirement to have all of our students take a curriculum which would prepare them for the University of California eligibility requirements. Some people said this is going to cause a lot of students to fail, but our graduation rate actually went up during that time. And our students were more prepared for college and also for technical careers. Just as an example, in the couple of years from 2015 to 2017, we had about 44% of our students were eligible for the University of California. And a couple of years later, we had 70% of our students eligible for that. But there was a particular increase among African Americans and Hispanic students. Teaching is at the heart of our system. I'm so happy that just very recently, in the last week or so, we've reached a tentative agreement with the teachers for a completely new evaluation system, replacing the old pass-fail system that was not that effective. And so now we have a growth and development model which will allow the teachers to work on themselves, to work with their peers, to work with our instructional leaders, to continuously improve the quality of instruction in our San Diego schools. And I truly believe that this agreement is going to serve as a landmark for other districts and other schools across the nation. Our goal in Vision 2020 was quality schools in every neighborhood. We are still working towards that goal, but we made substantial progress in a lot of areas. But I began to ask myself, is there an area where we haven't made progress? And I think one of those areas is in the stable funding of our schools. We have not achieved that. We've had unstable funding basically in California for the last 40 years. We know what works. For example, we have literacy coaches who have gone into the schools and they've taken the 2 or 3 lowest performing readers in the classroom and worked with them for a few weeks and brought their level up. But we want to take all these pilot programs we have in different pockets across the district to scale across the district, and for that we need the funds. So at about this time last year, we met together, San Diego Unified actually called a meeting of the other large urban districts to talk about a long-term plan for funding for school funding reform in the state of California. And we knew we would do what we do every year, which is go to Sacramento, Washington, D.C. and beg for a few more dollars, but we wanted to look at the longer term picture, just like we did in the curriculum with Vision 2020. We began talking about that, but soon after we got started, the pandemic hit. Unfortunately, at that time, we knew that we had already met with these other districts, so when the state was talking about cutting our funds massively for the current school year, we were able to rally together and make sure that we maintained the state funding that we had. But we also knew that we needed funding at the federal level, and San Diego Unified led districts across the nation in terms of appealing to Congress, and we're still working at that. Now, last summer, when we started thinking about reopening our schools after the pandemic, we heard so many conflicting guidelines: the Centers for Disease Control, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the California Department of Public Health, even the White House. Everybody had different guidelines. So we decided, let's go to UCSD, talk to the scientific and public health experts, and find out what would be reasonable guidelines for us to follow. Number one, what are the mitigations we need at school to make sure that our students are safe? And number two, what are the community conditions that would exist that would prohibit us from opening? So one of the things they recommended was for us to begin opening in phases. And so right now, we're in phase 1. Frankly, I don't think phase 1 has gone as fast or as broad as we would like. It's for our neediest students, our lowest performing students, our students with special needs to come in individually and in small groups. So we're now adding on middle school and high school to the elementary students that have already been doing that. We need to demonstrate that it is safe for the teachers to come back. We are addressing their childcare needs and so forth so that teachers can meet on campus and work with individuals and small groups of students. But let me make one thing perfectly clear. We all know that our students are suffering. We know that damage is being done by this pandemic. Every person, the superintendent, the board, and all of our staff are working diligently to make sure our schools can open as soon as possible in the safest possible manner. Our responsibility is to reopen the schools. We have a plan to reopen our schools in January, and we can be ready, and we're making the preparations for that. But there is one big factor that can stop us, which is the spread of the virus in our communities, particularly in many of our high needs and high poverty communities. So everybody needs to do their part in terms of following all the guidelines, the social distancing guidelines, not going to gatherings. Please stay away from restaurants and bars and other places like that so that we can move up to a safer level so that our students actually can begin school in January. We're going to come out of this stronger, just like we came out of the 2008 to 2012 crisis a lot stronger than when we first went into it. We've learned that, for example, state funding has been based on seat time, how much time the students spend, hours and minutes in class, and we know that learning is much broader than that. We're reforming our grading system so that we're basing it on what students actually learn, and if students need more time to learn or need a second chance, let's keep working with them until they get to the level they need to be. We're also reforming our discipline policies. The Black Lives Matter and social justice movement has pointed out the disproportionality in terms of our discipline practices. We're reimagining our police department. We really want to deal very directly with the systemic racism that exists in all organizations because of our unconscious biases that we have. And finally, in terms of online learning, we desperately want to return to in-person learning, but it's going to be different when we go back because we've learned from online learning that we can supplement in-person learning with online instruction and making it more individualized and having better communication between parents and teachers and students. and having meetings, for example, committee meetings across the district where we wouldn't necessarily have to travel across the city. We can just meet by the click of a button, and that's what we will continue to do once we go back. So just as I keep saying, as in 2008, we're going to come out stronger. I have great hope. We've begun planning for 2030. Our second graders are right now the class of 2030, and they're going to go through our system for the next several years. And I'm going to point out a couple of reasons that I have hope. Lincoln High School and the class of 2020. First of all, Lincoln High School. When Richard Barrera and I came on the board in 2008, Lincoln had just opened to a beautiful new campus, but in the ensuing years, we started hearing about low test scores, incidents of violence on campus, a revolving door of administrators, all of these things. And even though there was some success, we knew that there were very serious problems there. And so in the past year, last school year, the administration put in place a new team that really is working on the environment at the school to improve student achievement. And I'd heard from the very beginning that at the very beginning of the school year, the attendance increased, the tardiness decreased, discipline problems decreased. So I decided I wanted to see what it was like. And so I did sort of an undercover boss kind of thing, which is kind of hard to do because for me to blend into a high school for a day, but I put on my blue jeans and a t-shirt and a backpack, and I shadowed a student, and I sat in the classes, and I did the assignments and turned them into the teacher, just to get some idea of what it's like to be a high school student at Lincoln High School in 2020. I went to the English class and we learned about different cultural perspectives and how to look through a different lens in different situations and how to do an expository writing on that. I turned that into the teacher. I'm not sure exactly what grade I got. I went to the algebra class and I learned, or I should say relearned, how to divide polynomials. And the teacher explained it very clearly to the students, and then they began to work in small groups, collaborating and helping each other. And then at the end, they had each of them work on something individually to turn into her so she could see who had gotten the concept and who needed more help. But at the end of the class, after I had done and solved the problems, I just had to go up to the teacher and I said, "Did I do it right?" And she said that I had. And I said, "Yes." I felt so good. And that's how a student feels when a teacher is effectively teaching and they actually master something. So I walked around the campus. It was a calm and peaceful place. The word discipline never really occurred to me in the course of the day. The students were very engaged. There was a high level of respect between the teachers and the students, not the authoritarian atmosphere that I had grown up with when I was in high school. And I really realized that these students are much better prepared for the world than when I had gone to high school myself. And then the class of 2020. The class of 2020 was in first grade when we first came on the board. And we followed them through every year and taping them, asking about their school, what they liked and didn't like, what their lives were like, what they thought about the world, all the way up to their last year in high school. I would love for you to be able to see those tapes because I can't do it justice. They're so inspirational. You can go to the YouTube, to Sandy Unified School District, Vision 2020, Class of 2020. You can see some of those videos of our students speaking. But they were so eloquent, so intelligent, so creative, and so innovative that I really have hope for the future in terms of what they were doing. And one of the things that happened was they certainly, when they were in first grade, we had no idea that the last few months of their high school, instead of senior activities, they would be spending at home in front of a computer. They wouldn't have a traditional graduation. They wouldn't have a traditional going off to the first year of college. And yet when I taped them for the last time, they were so positive and so resilient and ready to move forward in the world. One of the last things that one of the students, Kiyab, said before she was to go off to UCLA, she said, "You know, there's all these problems in the world hunger, poverty, all these things, the divisions that we need to work on. We just need more unity and more love and more compassion." And they really demonstrated that they have what it takes. So I'm hopeful because we have the right superintendent in place. We have a great Board of Education. As I'm leaving right now, I must say that this year, or the last 4 years, this Board of Education has been the best Board of Education, the most efficient, the most coherent and hardworking that I've seen during the entire time that I've been on the board. And that also gives me hope. We know that we have a lot to make up in terms of the damage that's been caused, but we can come out stronger. And in terms of 2020 and 2030, the class of 2020 is going to benefit through all these years with a continuous and ongoing improvement of instruction by the time they graduate. between now and 2030. But in 2030, the class of 2020 is going to be out 10 years. They're going to be hitting their stride, and they're going to be making a big and important and wonderful mark upon the world, and I look forward to that. So I can say that the state of the district is alive and developing, and with our students and our teachers and our community, we are unstoppable. Thank you.